This red number is gone. In 2009, I wrote a blog post predicting exactly how it would happen. Buffalo Trace had just removed the age statement from Old Weller Antique. They said nothing was changing. But I didn't believe them. 3 years later, it started happening across the industry. This is what happened to that number and why it matters right now. To understand what happened to this number, you need to know one rule. If an age statement appears on a bourbon label, federal law requires that it reflect the youngest whiskey in the bottle, not the average, not the majority, the youngest drop. That one rule explains everything that happened to this bottle. And two other things worth knowing, and both are important for what you're about to see. No age statement on a straight bourbon whiskey means the law guarantees it's at least 4 years old. That's a floor, not a promise. Bottle and bond, the gold standard, 1 distillery, 1 season, minimum of 4 years old, 100 proof, federally bonded. The one designation that can't be gamed. The industry had a system that worked for decades, and that one decision changed the math for everyone. I've lived this rule firsthand. This is one of mine. A Weller Antique I personally selected at Buffalo Trace. Picking Weller casks for antique bottlings, 30 to 40 barrels over the last decade. Some came in at 6 years old, some came in at 8. The same warehouse, same mash bill, different ages. Blend a 6 and 8 together and the label can only say 6. That's not a theory. I watched it happen barrel by barrel. September 2009. Buffalo Trace removes the age statement from Old Weller Antique. 7-year, 107 proof. One of the best value bourbons on the shelf, a wheated bourbon that needed that age. Go younger than 7 years on a wheated mash and you risk rough edges that don't belong there. Buffalo Trace's explanation, new bottle format, no room for the age statement, the juice isn't changing. In my blog post, I wrote, what other reason on God's green earth would they remove the age statement if not to prepare for the age reduction of the bourbon in the bottle? The bourbon community pushed back. Buffalo Trace held firm. Within a few years, shorter age whiskey was in the bottle. I wasn't an oracle, I had no insider information, it's been done before and the pattern wasn't hard to see. What Buffalo Trace was actually facing was the youngest drop rule. If you blend even 1 barrel of younger whiskey to maintain supply, the label has to indicate that youngest age. The number becomes a constraint on your own inventory management. Remove the number and you remove the constraint. That's the math every distillery was about to run. Once the domino fell, the next ones came in waves. Old Weller Antique and Weller Special Reserve dropped the age statement. These were Buffalo Trace brands, wheated bourbons where age mattered most. By December 2013, Varial Barton had dropped the 6-year age statement off their bottle and bond, and by 2018, the bottle and bond was gone altogether. Now their bourbon was a blend of whatever 4 to 6 year old barrels they had on hand. Ancient age 10-year became 10 star. The number stayed on the label, the meaning didn't, the pattern was clear to anyone who was watching. Then January 2014, Old Charter number 8. Old Charter number 8 had always said 2 things on the label. Aged 8 years, right there, prominent, and gently matured for 8 seasons in century-old brick warehouses. In January 2014, Buffalo Trace removed aged 8 years. They left 8 seasons sitting there alone. A distillery has 2 distillation seasons. Do the math. It took a federal class action lawsuit to force the conversation. The 8-year wasn't the oldie one. Old Charter ran a full ladder at one point. 7-year, the 10-year, the 12-year Classic 90, and one of the finest bourbons of the era, the Old Charter Proprietor's Reserve 13-year. I have 4 of the 5 rungs. The only one I don't have is the 8-year, and that's because it's the only one still alive. It just goes by 8 seasons now. Buffalo Trace bought the brand in 1997, and within a decade they killed the 7, the 10, the 12, and the 13. Not stripped of NAS, just gone. The 8-year survived by hiding. April 2015, Heaven Hill makes a change to the Elijah Craig small batch. The prominent red 12, front and center and on the label for nearly 30 years, moves to small print on the back. That move to the back label, Heaven Hill's ambassador publicly addressed the concern and called it sarcastic and conspiratorial, denied any intention to drop the age statement at all. In my April 2015 post, titled, "Let the Freak Out Begin," I told readers to buy bottles. 7 months after the denial, the age statement was gone entirely. I bought half a case before it happened. The same year, Knob Creek drops the 9-year guarantee. The bourbon people had trusted the most now told them the least. Evan Williams' own 7-year disappeared into an extra aged label with no number at all. And Virgin Bourbon 7-year, Heaven Hill's own source whiskey, sold under someone else's label, gone the same year Heaven Hill kept that age stock for themselves, for their own 7-year bottle and bond. They didn't just lose the number. Heaven Hill cut their own customer to keep it for themselves. Here's the honest version of what happened. The demand surge of the early 2010s was faster than anyone had anticipated. Global bourbon consumption climbed every year. Distilleries that had been running at normal capacity suddenly couldn't keep shelves stocked. The youngest drop rule, the rule designed to protect consumers, became the mechanism that made age statements impossible to keep. If you blend younger whiskey to meet demand, you are legally obligated to print a number that misrepresents what's mostly in the bottle. Distilleries chose to print no number rather than a misleading one. Some of them. Others, like Old Charter, found a different path. The choice was drop the age statement, go into heavy allocation, raise prices dramatically. Most distilleries chose availability over transparency. This wasn't new. They lowered proof in the 1960s for the same reason. Different tool, same math. In 2020, Knob Creek returned the 9-year age statement. The stocks that had been depleted during the surge had now recovered, and the 9-year was back because they could afford to say it again. Old Grandad is doing something stranger. Same bottle, same proof. One says nothing about age, the other says 7 years. Beam is running both at the same time, and in 2024 they went further by releasing a 16-year-old. In 2025, the 7-year Bottle and Bond became an annual release. They're not choosing a side anymore, they're selling both. This is the original, 12 years old from the glut, and I found this like I found everything else, dusty hunting. And this is Wild Turkey's answer in 2026. 16 years old, 120 proof, non-chill filtered, the label even says it, an ode to the original gold foil release. They're not guessing what the glut tasted like. I have the proof right here. They're chasing it on purpose. And Wild Turkey isn't the only one sending that signal. The TTB label approvals from the last few months tell you exactly where the industry thinks the market is going. Evan Williams' first run, 12 years, 113 proof, from exactly 20 barrels filled during the opening year of the Evan Williams bourbon experience. That's not a shelf release, that's a statement about what they've been sitting on. Old Grandad Single Barrel 114, 8 years, 10 months, 114 proof. The brand that's currently running NAS in 7 years simultaneously, now adding a single barrel age-stated release on top. And Beam isn't stopping at bourbon. Old Overholt, their rye, 12 years old, 117 proof, released the same year. They also released a 10-year and an 11-year. Same house, same playbook. And then there's this. Heaven Hill Phoenix, 18-year bourbon, mingled with pre-fire 30-year bourbon distilled at Old Heaven Hill Springs Distillery at 107 proof. The label says 3 words, remember, rebuild, and rise. In 1996, the Heaven Hill fire destroyed 90,000 barrels. 30 years later, they're releasing what survived it. Wild Turkey, Evan Williams, Old Grandad, Heaven Hill. Every significant age-stated release hitting TTB right now is at or above 107 proof. The age statement isn't coming back alone. The proof is coming back with it. There are 16.1 million barrels aging in Kentucky. We covered that number in video 6. That was the glut building. This is what the other side of that curve looks like. Distilleries moving aged, high-proof inventory before it gets too old to use. The age statement is the signal. The proof is the lever. In 2026, Maker's Mark is adding an age statement to their cask strength, a brand that's never put a number on any of its labels. In 2009, removing the age statement was how you competed. In 2026, putting it back on is how you compete. The bottle didn't change, the market did. This bottle sold for around $26 in 2015. You can walk into any store and find it. I bought half a case before the age statement disappeared. In an upcoming video, I'll cover how in December 2014, the Wall Street Journal reached out and asked a Senate reporter to interview me. We spent 2 days together. They called it hoarding, I called it collecting. The shortage that created the frenzy and what it tells you about where we are right now. Pour thoughtfully, draw slowly, and savor the journey. I'll see you in the next one.